Marine plastic debris is plastic that has been created and manufactured on land and that has somehow found its way into the sea through bad waste management. And here you can see me on the west coast of Scotland with just an example of some of the amount of plastic that is washing up in oceans around the world. I first started kind of noticing this more than 10 years ago, and I've been photographing marine plastic debris for more than 10 years, just only marine plastic debris. This particular issue just completely shocked me when I found like a children's car seat, a fridge freezer, a computer washing up on the east coast of England, just where I used to live. I realised that I wanted to try and engage audiences to try and understand what was going on, maybe people that live inland and don't actually go to the coast. Initially, I began to photograph items as I found them on the shoreline like this, but I realised that people weren't really interested in seeing rubbish because, you know, it's quite a common phenomenon at the moment. So I realised that I had to collect the objects and bring them back to the studio and try and give them some sort of aesthetic visual attraction to try and attract people to look at the rubbish and then read the information and the captions as to what it was representing. So here you can see fishermen's gloves and plastic bags. And I just gave the simple caption of the amount of years it took for each of these plastic items to degrade in the ocean. For example, 30 years for PVC plastic fishermen's gloves on the right-hand side there to degrade. So all of these different plastic objects, I created a timeline. You can see the orange plastic bag there took 1 to 3 years to degrade. And then at the end of the timeline is a piece of styrofoam or polystyrene, which is aerated plastic, which never ever goes away. It's always with us somewhere on the planet. And in the middle there, you can see the base of a plastic bottle, which takes 450 years to degrade in the ocean. Since science has moved on, they say that plastic, all plastic that's ever produced, is still with us somewhere on the planet. After I did more research into the plastic that was existing in my local area, I realised that this was a common problem around the world. And this particular image shows 276 pieces of plastic that was recovered from the stomach of an albatross chick. This is a 30-day-old juvenile albatross bird. This image shows objects collected from several albatross juvenile chicks. And what was particularly horrific for me was that the Epsom inkjet cartridge there is the inkjet cartridge that I use in my printer at home. And to think that this object could be found in the stomach of a bird was something that shocked me beyond belief and just made me feel that I would never ever give up this subject. After I'd photographed single objects, I decided it would be really good to represent the mass accumulations that are existing in the ocean. So this image is called Soup Refused, and this is based on a collection of plastic that was from the island in Greece. And basically on the shoreline, goats were eating plastic and then spitting out the plastic into the sea, and that was being carried back out into the ocean. So this is another example of a land animal which is interacting with plastic. This is called Soup Turtle, and this is based on children's bath toys, floating bath toys that fell from a container ship in 1992. And these bath toys circulated all around the world, and oceanographers have made many different discoveries on where they ended up. Some were found in the Arctic, frozen in the Arctic, and then they thawed and then kind of carried on their journey around the rest of the world. Just to show an example of how marine creatures and birds could mistake plastic for food, on the left-hand side here is a ball of monofilament fishing line, and on the right-hand side are fish eggs. So it's quite easy for creatures to mistake plastic for food. Using the monofilament fishing line, I created this image called Bird's Nest Soup, and this is based on a swarm of jellyfish, and just to show the amount of plastic that's floating in the oceans. This image is almost like a kind of a full stop. It's to represent the fact that 500 plus pieces of plastic were found in one albatross. So there's 500 and more pieces there that are in a compact arrangement, a bit similar to how probably the plastic would exist in the stomach of the bird. Another project I did was I thought it would be really good to try and link people around the world to be involved in my work. So I put out a social media call for people to collect footballs or soccer balls from their local beach and to post them to me so that I could create an image. Unlike COP26, when all, kind of international leaders and people are coming together, I thought this would be a global representation of a plastic issue and problem. So people started to send me footballs from all around the world, and this particular man sent 228 from the west coast of Scotland. And in the end, I received 769 footballs from all over the world. And I created this image called Penalty the World. The series is called Penalty because in the game of football, penalty is an error or a mistake. And I think this is quite appropriate because penalty is the price that we're all going to pay if we don't do something about this plastic issue. I work with scientists a lot in my work, which is what underpins, kind of what I do, the scientific research, the plastic, the effects on animals, etc. This is an example of an expedition that went to Henderson Island in 2019. And I was very lucky to join these scientists to this remote location. As you can see, it's one of the remotest places on the planet. It's isolated right in the middle of the South Pacific Ocean. And unfortunately, in 2017, it was named one of the most plastic polluted beaches on the planet. It's the most stunning, uninhabited coral atoll, one of only 2 coral atolls in the world. And it has endemic species and birds that live nowhere else on the planet. Unfortunately, the beaches were actually covered in plastic. This is an example of me photographing some of the plastic in a cave on Henderson Island. I created images based on the amount of plastic we found on the island. Incidentally, the island is more than 5,000 kilometres from the nearest major landmass. So all these objects have travelled more than 5,000 kilometres to reach this remote island. And we found 45 different logos and brands from companies that made plastic and from more than 25 different countries. So it's absolutely shocking to think that this plastic has travelled this distance to end up in this remote, pristine UNESCO World Heritage Site. This is a detail of some of the objects we found. As you can see, shampoo bottles, bleach bottles, packaging, and these marks are actually from sharks or fish or turtles that have actually bitten pieces out of the plastic. So my work is created as an intention to be attractive. This is what I aim to do so that people are drawn to the images and then they can read about the science, they can read about what I'm representing. And my work is published, it's been published in more than 50 different countries. This is an example of work published in National Geographic. Also, my work is exhibited around the world. This is an example of how it's possible to liaise with a community in Gexco in Spain. So my work isn't just seen in galleries because it's really important that people, can engage with it on a day-to-day basis, whether they're going to work, whether they're going shopping. It's really important that people do get the message of, the amount of plastic that's out in the ocean. And this is a really good way of doing it. This just shows the amount of coverage, really, of the plastic that I've collected from around the world. I think it's safe to say that I'm not just collecting plastic on my local beach. This is been from expeditions in the oceans and from many different places around the world. So you might be asking, what can we do? Well, on a basic level, you can refuse plastic. As Ruth mentioned earlier, there's many different alternatives to plastic. But at the moment, the critical point we've come to is that recycling just isn't enough. I mean, the amount of bottles and things I found on Henderson Island, which were recyclable bottles, still shows that, things are ending up there. What we really need to do is design out waste in the beginning. So we need to make products that don't ultimately end up as plastic waste, and then we have nothing to get rid of. So COP26 is our chance to engage with world leaders, climate experts, heads of state from all around the world. It's a time to come together to talk about this and to put in, international legislation to tackle this problem. And if you'd like to see any more about my work and what I do, then you can visit my website. Just to leave you with an example of quite often what my suitcase looks like when I go on holiday. I just collect plastic from wherever I go, and this is a result of my return.